You know, it's better when parents stay together.
After all, you are the one who chose to have a baby.
I mean, look, you're the one who chose wrong. I remember feeling like I wanted so bad to have company for anyone to come and visit me. Unfortunately, I wouldn't receive any visitors for a long time, and even then, there were not many who came around. It wasn't just a script, it all came from something real. Yes, you heard my voice correctly at the beginning of this video. I have been sick, but you know what? Single parents, we don't stop just because we're sick. I wanted to get this video out, so here it is. Here is my voice, my authentic self. I got my tea right here, and we're gonna do this. Now, you're told to be grateful for any support you get, right? But what happens when that support starts depleting you and making you feel bad about yourself? What happens when the people who claim they want to help you are the same ones who are guilt tripping you, dismissing your emotions, or they are making you feel like you are doing everything wrong? I walked away from my so-called support system and I don't regret it. When I was pregnant, I had so many people who seemed like they were genuinely excited for me and also seemed like they were very eager to be a part of my son's life. Slowly but surely, it all started to collapse around me. I think the first thing that I can really remember hurting me was when I had a friend of years offer to throw me a baby shower just to 1 or 2 weeks later scrap the whole thing. The way that I was raised, it's very hard for me to act entitled to anything or to even ask a simple question like, hey, why did you offer to do something so special and meaningful for me to suddenly just change your mind without explanation? Eventually, I thought that I could just throw my own baby shower. But with time, I realized that it would just take too much effort and focus away from already having a lot to plan for with welcoming my first baby. Fast forward to a few months after my son was born, I was a single mother and I was trying to navigate a highly contentious co-parenting relationship with my son's father. Honestly, it just seemed like my situation made other people so uncomfortable that they would rather distance themselves from me and act like I didn't exist anymore. There were those types of people. There were also the other type that would give me space to talk about my situation and vent my frustrations about what was going on. But what would often end up happening during conversations is that the judgment and criticism would end up being directed toward me. I'm typically an introspective person who is open to feedback. However, that was not the time to give me feedback when I was going through the thick of my situation, my hardship. It wasn't the time, especially when that feedback really was more about criticism and judgment than genuinely wanting to help me. I have never gotten into details about exactly what has happened between myself and my son's dad, and I don't plan to do that on this video either, but as I've briefly mentioned in some other videos, I experienced a lot of hostility and harassment from him for a little over a year and a half. I remember trying to lean on my support system when he would make me upset, and the responses that I would get would sometimes be something to the effect of,
Well, you let him make you upset.
what I was experiencing from him was emotional abuse. And to have someone who supposedly was a part of my support system and supposedly was a friend, to have that person just reduce what I was feeling to a simple,
Don't let him make you mad.
was very hurtful. This same person had often vented to me about financial stress that she had related to the rising cost of living and her rent going up and being on a limited income. If I would have taken her approach, I could have just said something like,
"Stop letting money stress you out. Just get another job."
I had another friend who once made a comment to me about my son's family on his dad's side, and she said,
"I bet he is going around telling everyone in his family that the reason why he doesn't see your son more is because of you."
And I said, "Oh, for sure that's what he's doing. He's saying that to his friends, to his family, to his coworkers, to anyone with 2 ears who will listen. That is for sure what he is saying." And she quickly replied,
"Yeah, but who cares though?"
Maybe to some of you listening to this story, you could see that as her attempt to be encouraging or to be positive in some way. But the reason why I didn't like that comment is because she is the one who brought it up. She is the one who opened that topic. And then when I agreed with what she was saying, she immediately shut it down and told me how I should feel about the situation, that I shouldn't care. It was like she started the fire and then told me to not feel the heat. I had another friend who I once sent screenshots to of a text conversation that was happening in real time between my son's father and I. And after I sent her these screenshots, her immediate response to it was,
"Well, you're both acting really immature."
I was so taken aback by her comment. I was like, immature where? You don't have the full context. You're jumping to conclusions. In response to that, she pointed out a part of the message where I had said something to the effect of, "Are you going to go running to your mommy for help?" If you're just reading a text exchange and you don't have the broader context and you don't know the full picture, I can understand how that would come across as being immature. The reason why I had made that comment is because my son's dad's mom, my son's grandma, frequently got involved in our conflict to the point where I was basically ganged up on. Listen, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I never made nasty comments. I'm not saying that I couldn't ever get petty during heated exchanges. What I am trying to get at here is that a real, genuine friend who cared about me and had my best interest at heart would have wanted to know, would have been curious about the broader picture, would have wanted to know where those types of comments were coming from, instead of making a snap judgment and playing the moral authority, telling me that, well, we were both immature, as if we were on an even playing field when it came to that. You know, the type of person where in any type of contentious situation you may end up in, they always tell you to be the bigger person, but later on you find out this person who's always telling you to be the bigger person has all kinds of shady shit that goes on in their life. Yep, that was her, and she was in fact not the bigger person. The final person who I am going to briefly talk about as an example to what my so-called support system looked like is my brother. My brother had been there for me during a major crisis, which I am grateful for. However, being there for me during a crisis kind of seemed to have a price tag on it, an emotional price tag. Unfortunately, my brother was someone who often encouraged me to give the benefit of the doubt to my son's father. He downplayed a lot of things that I was going through, even hinted to me a few times that what was happening wasn't really so bad. It's just that I was overreacting a little bit, that I was exaggerating because I was scarred from some past events that had happened. He also would frequently tell me that my son's dad was a coward, that he was a bitch, and that part is really important, and here is why. He told me all of those things, making me feel as though I was crying over nothing. And then when it came time that I asked if my teenage niece could come and spend a weekend with me during the summer and spend time with the baby as well, he replied no. And the reason why is because he said, and I quote,
"There is a 1% chance that Gabriel's dad could find out that she's there staying with you, and he could snap and do something crazy."
A 1% chance from the coward, the bitch, the guy that goes running to his mommy, the guy that I shouldn't even be that worked up about? Right, my niece coming to visit is what would make him snap. Not the fact that I divorced him, not the fact that I enforced child support against him, not the fact that we were almost always in constant conflict. I mean, are you fucking serious? What I'm getting at with all of this, and remember, these are just a few examples of what I experienced for over a year and a half, is that these people made me feel so alone. Of course, there were good moments. Of course, they were not criticizing me every single time that we spoke. But these things did happen enough to where it made me really doubt myself. It made me feel like I was exaggerating what I was going through. It made me feel weak. It made me feel crazy. And above all else, it made me feel like I was a worthless mother. It wasn't helpful to my son or to me, and that's not what support looks like. Honestly, there wasn't just one single moment that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that it was just continuously having these experiences over and over again. They weren't one-off situations, they were patterns. It was kind of a snowball effect where the disrespect and the lack of support continued to accumulate until it was impossible for me to deny what was going on. Let me just tell you this. If you notice that you have to mentally prepare yourself every time you are going to speak to someone or visit that person, if you notice that each time you speak with them or you visit them, you feel depleted, confused, drained, attacked, that person is not part of your support system. They are just putting you in emotional debt, and you can't afford that. With a couple people, I just simply distanced myself from them. I didn't make any dramatic announcement. And honestly, I don't think they really noticed because ultimately they didn't care that much. With others, I did tell them that I wasn't interested in continuing communication with them, and I told them why. There are days where I feel incredibly lonely. I am not here trying to claim like I am some hardened person with no soul, because I'm not. Walking away from my support system was very hard, but it was harder having those people in my life because they were that unsupportive. I know that I can make other friends. It takes time and it takes effort, but I would rather rebuild something better than to just remain in a house where nothing is working anymore. I am very proud that I chose myself. I am proud that I had the resilience and strength to walk away from something that wasn't good for me in the face of single parenthood and loneliness. This is also an important life lesson that I want to teach my son. Don't settle. Hold up your boundaries. Ask yourself what you're getting from the relationship. If you weren't lonely and afraid, would you still want that person in your life? It's honestly better to walk your path alone than be poorly accompanied. You can and will meet better people along the way, especially now that you have made space for them. If you take anything away from this video, let it be this. You don't owe anyone loyalty just because you share a past or you share blood. Trust in yourself, trust in your intuition, trust in your strength to carry on, and you will be happier. If this video resonated with you at all, make sure that you give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe so that we can hang out more, and I will see you in the next video.